Hi everyone and welcome. My name is Wouter and in this video I'm going to talk to you about service templates. Now in one of the previous videos you already learned about services in DataMiner and you learned about what they are and also how to create one. Now in reality you will of course have a lot of services in your system and you will also have a lot of services that are quite similar. Now, you don't want to create all of these services manually, one by one. So that's where we will be using service templates. Service templates allow us to more quickly and more efficiently create a lot of services that are similar. A service template can be seen as a sort of blueprint. It defines how your service looks like, what are the components, how does the service behave. Then we will apply certain input data to that service template. So it can be as simple as a CSV file where all of the information is inputted by the user, or it can be coming from a table inside an element in your system. So this data is applied to the template and then your services are generated and ready to use. Creating a service template is quite easy, quite straightforward. So let's have a look, let's dive in. All right, I have my DataMiner cube open here and I will now show you how to create a service template. So I have my view here and I just gonna right click here and go to new service template. And then I have my service template. I'm gonna create a service template for a television channel. So I'm gonna give it the appropriate name. Going to copy that over to the description. And then I need to configure the input data. Now, as you recall, the input data is what is used to feed the service template. So the service template will get its information from the input data. And for this example, I'm just going to go with a CSV input. So we're going to provide all the input data ourselves to the service template. So what do we need for a television channel? First of all, we're going to want to ask for a channel name. So I'm going to add some input data that specifies the channel name. Okay, channel name. So we'll be providing it with a CSV file. So this is user input, and then I'm going to just leave it at that. So this is the channel name, and then I'm going to need to provide it some. It's going to need some elements. So I'm going to have to provide it the name of these elements, and so I'm going to use an IRD. I'm going to need an IRD. And I'll also, so this is also user input, and I'm gonna select here in the detail section that I need this to be a valid element name, because yeah, user specifies it, so it needs to be a correct element name in order to be able to apply that specific line of information. And then I'm going to need my switch as well. So do it like that. Also, this is user input, and I'm also going to require a valid element name. So these are the three input data that I'm going to have to provide to the service template. So next we need to specify the elements that will be part of the generated services. So let's select that. So we're going to have to add two elements actually. So one for the IRD and one for the switch. So first of all, we're going to add the IRD, and we're going to use a templated element because we're going to actually ask the user, if you want to put it like that, we're going to ask the user, by means, of course, of the CSV file, what the name of the element needs to, or is going to be. So this is a templated element. So we need to specify the protocol. So we know that our IRD is a Philips DVS, and I'm gonna need to specify the name mask. The name mask is coming from the CSV, so it's coming from the input data. So I can click this triangle here and then go to input data and select the IRD. So this is my IRD. And second, I need to specify my switch. It's on the screen here. Okay. So again, a templated element. I know that my switch is a generic, sorry, that's not entirely correct, a generic switch. Okay, generic switch. And again, I need to take the name that is provided to me in the CSV file, or that is at least provided to the service template. So I have my two elements now, and then I need to tell DataMiner what name to use for the service. So in this case, I'm also going to use my input data. We asked for a channel name, so we're going to use that channel name as the name of our service. We will also be putting that service or those generated services in a view. So of course our service template will also be placed somewhere, but that's where we right click, so that's already selected. And then I'm just gonna put the generated services in the same view, so I'm also gonna select those or that view, the service templates view. So this kind of finalizes our configuration here, so I'm gonna save that template now. Okay, so now I have my template, and next I need to apply that template, and for that we're gonna need some input data, so we're gonna need a CSV file. Alright, so I have now my CSV file here that I prepared, and you can see that I have two lines here, one for my BBC channel and one for my CNN channel, and they contain both all the information that we required. So the first one is the channel name that will be used to create or to use as the name of the service that will be generated. We have the IRD element, which is different for both of my channels, and then we also have the switch element, which is shared among the services. So I'm now going to apply that CSV file to my service template. So in my surveyor, I'm going to right click on this service template. I'm going to hit apply, and then I get this screen here, and at the bottom right here you have the import configuration from CSV button. So I click that, and then I'll be able to select the CSV file that I just showed you. And then if everything goes according to plan, as you can see, my two services are now created, and as you can see, they both contain their respective IRD element and the same switch element. So now we created two services just in one go by applying that to the service template. Alright, so I showed you how to create a service template, but of course, if you paid attention, you might have noticed that there are quite some more options that you can configure. So let's have a look again and dig a little bit deeper into some of the more advanced options that you can configure. I have my service template open again here, and let's have a look at some of the other options that we can configure. So on the General tab here, we already have some advanced options that we can configure. First of all, we can, so the first option, it allows us to specify that a user, upon applying a service template, needs to do an additional confirmation that the template can be applied. So it's an initial security measure before applying the template. The second option allows us to configure that the template needs to be reapplied whenever a new element is added to the system. And so in that way, new services can be created automatically whenever an appropriate element enters the system. And the third option allows us to keep a duplicate of any services that were generated in the past whenever the service template is reapplied. If we look at the input data, we already configured the user input data, but we have two other options, the table row index and the fixed value. Now to continue on the user input, we already saw the first option here in the details, which is the requirement to add a valid element name. It makes sense. And the second one is to allow the NA value to specify that if you don't want to add a value for that specific input data. So if we look at the other types, we have, for example, the table row index. If we configure that, let me open it. Yes, if we configure that, we can choose whether we want to select the table from any element in the system, which is here defined as other element. So we can select one of the elements that we have. In this case, for training purposes here, we only have these three elements available. Or we can choose one of the child elements. And these child elements are actually the ones that we will configure in the service template itself. Once we select our element, just going to select one here, we can select then the parameter, one of the table parameters. And additionally, we can also select a filter mask, but that's optional. So that's for the table row index. Another option is to use a fixed value and just enter a value, optionally also by using any of the placeholder information that we have here. We can also add groups to service templates. That's similar to what we can configure in services. So in this way, we can group certain elements underneath, well, a group, of course, so that we can do specific actions on that group instead of on each element separately. So if you want to add a new group, we click, of course, on Add New Group here, and we can make the necessary configuration on that group. So what can we configure? We have the dynamic include and exclude. To configure that, we need to add a trigger to define when the dynamic inclusion or exclusion will happen. So we can add and then edit this trigger. The trigger can be based on different items. We can have the trigger based on the alarm state of a specific parameter. We can also trigger on the element alarm state or on a parameter value. So let's say that we want to trigger on the alarm state. We select one of the elements. We can use any element in our system or use one of the child elements that we configured. Let's select one. Then we can, or we need to select the parameter. So I'm just gonna say, for example, LNB1 supply. Parameter index is not applicable in this case. And then we can specify, for example, that this value needs to be, or the alarm rather, needs to be normal, for example, to trigger, or it needs to be critical, for example. And of course, we can also specify a delay, which means that this specific alarm needs to be active for at least, for example, say 5 seconds before this trigger is activated. So this is the inclusion or exclusion. The next option is the what will happen once the group is included. What will happen with the alarm state? So how will it influence the alarm state? So in this case also we should add a trigger, and basically the configuration is also the same here. Based on the alarm state, element alarm state or parameter value, we can define whether or not it should influence the overall alarm severity. Then we have the configuration of the alarm capping. So basically what we can do is we can say that when the element, or in this case the elements that belong to the group, when they are included, we want the we define the maximum severity that is propagated towards the service. So by default that's critical because it's included, so it will move the entire the entire alarm state will be propagated to the service, but we can cap that to, for example, major. In that case, if you have a critical alarm on one of the elements, the service will at most have a major alarm. The other way around is also possible. Normally when there is no influence, so when it's excluded, when it's not used, normally there is no alarm being propagated to the service, but we can, for example, specify that we at least want it to be seen as a warning alarm on the service. Additionally, we can also add it to another group, so we can add a group to a group. That's also configurable right here. So that's our group. For the child elements, we already added these elements, so let's have a look here as well, what other options there are. So in case you would have configured a group, you can add them to your group here. Second, you can add an alias. Sorry for that. You can also add an alias to a specific child element. So an alias actually defines the name of the element inside your service. So if you have a look here at the services that we created earlier, you can see that the IRD and the switch, they have their actual name of the element. But in this case, with the alias, you could override that name. So for example, in this case, it's using a placeholder and it's referring to the title here, which means it won't be changing it. So we can, for example, change that to IRD here, or like this, and switch. So in this case, if we would apply that service template again, it would match, or it would change the name here to that. So it would use that as the placeholder, or as the alias rather. To select an element, we now worked with the templated element, but we can also use a fixed element. So we can just select a fixed element from our system, or a fixed service. That's basically the same thing. So we use the templated element, where we can use the name mask, of course, and use it from our input data or from any other placeholder available. The options that we have here are whether or not we allow the element to be reused by multiple services. We can also specify that this child is optional, so that if no data is given for this element, we don't care about it. And in case we use a mask with wildcards and we would find multiple elements that match, we can allow all of them to be added to the service. We can also add alternatives. If you have services that use different types of, for example, IRDs with different protocols, because we have to specify our protocol here, you can add alternatives for the other types. We can also specify a templated service that's pretty much similar in the way we specify a templated element. As you know, you can include all the parameters from an element, but you can also choose to only include certain parameters. So you can also do that. You can add a masking for the parameters to say which ones that you want to add. Okay, it's here. So then again, we have the same thing as we can do with groups, the dynamic inclusion and exclusion, and also whether we want to influence the alarm state. And also the alarm capping is configurable on an alarm level as well here. For the generated service, so we have the channel name here, so we already discussed that. We can also do the same for the service description. We can assign a visual overview file to the service immediately as well upon generating them, specifying the default page. We can also add a service protocol, so we can select one of the available ones in the system. And we can also assign an alarm and a service template to it, well, based of course on the service protocol. Additionally, we can also add service properties immediately when generating them. We can also configure root cause analysis chains, so RCA chains. So we can say, for example, that okay, if we have a problem on our IRD, it's most likely related to sorry, I have to do it the other way around. It's most likely related to the switch. So like this. We can also create an SLA for every service that is generated and add certain properties to it. We already went over this. Where do we want to create the specific services that are generated? And then we also have some advanced options that are related to the input data order, but this is very specific. So I suggest you read about this in the DataMiner help if you need more information about that. So these are all the more advanced options that you can configure. Of course, if you need any more information, of course, you find everything you need on the DataMiner docs, so on docs.dataminer.services. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that you have now a better view on what service templates are and how you can use them. For any more information, of course, feel free to visit docs.dataminer.services. Thank you very much.